Recording software was not going well, so hopefully this goes well.
Yeah, really.
And Discord doesn't like me either, apparently.
Which is weird because we both used Discord very recently and it worked fine, so I'm not really sure what's going on.
I don't know, but I can see that it's recording my voice, so we're good, I guess. But how are you?
I'm doing alright. I've had a headache for like 2 straight weeks now, but other than that...
Take Spexetrin, Jesus.
Yeah, I don't have Excedrin. I took Midol and I've taken ibuprofen.
Midol works really well too, because of caffeine.
So I'm not really sure what the heck's going on. I'm just blaming
it could be the change in weather, and also the pollen is really bad right now.
I was gonna say I'm happy to blame it on like leftover COVID gunk.
That could be it too.
Because I had a headache while I was suffering with COVID. So how are you?
I'm tired.
I feel a little congested, but that could just be allergies because I'm
if this episode sounds all stuffed up and gross, it's because we're both dying. It's fine.
So what are your highs and lows? I guess we'll just hop into that.
My lows is probably allergies. I had to take a ton of allergy meds yesterday, and I still didn't feel like it helped that much.
That's a move.
But my high is probably just being alive. I don't know. Nothing crazy has happened or changed right now.
I feel that. Being alive. Sometimes that's enough.
Just hanging out. Just doing life stuff.
Life stuff?
Life stuff.
Fair enough.
The good old life stuff. How about you?
Well, I have a thing that is a low and a high, and then I have a high. So I'll start with the low/high, which is that I, at the beginning of last week, put in my 2 weeks notice at my current job, and that comes very bittersweet feeling. And I care about my residents. And the residents, I haven't told them yet. I'm waiting until this week when I start training the person who's taking my place. Because I don't know how to just be like, hey, I'm quitting. Like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. They must have a sixth sense or something. They've always been really good about telling me how much they appreciate me. I never feel like the residents don't appreciate all of the work that I do for them. However, this past week, they have been like extra, we care about you, we love you.
And you're like, of course, you sixth sense bastards.
That it's gonna get done if you're doing it situation. And I'm just like, oh, you guys are breaking my heart. Oh no.
At least you know that you're cared for, though.
Yeah, and I care about them too. And I'm not moving or anything, at least not at this moment. So I can still go visit them, and I do plan to. I've put myself on the visitation list for one of the residents who I'm particularly close to.
Oh.
With his permission, of course.
Yeah, because he would be like, hello? Why are you showing up? Lady, please leave me alone.
Yeah, so with his permission, I have put myself on the visitation list so that I can go and visit without there being a problem. It's a high and low because, I'm excited to move on to the next thing. My other high, which is such an adulting high. Well, this isn't the high. Our vacuum broke. The high is that we got a new vacuum, an upgraded model from the one we had before, and it is so nice. We were so excited about it. We cleaned the whole house with just a vacuum yesterday.
Honestly, when you get a new appliance and you start using it, you're like, man, this is so much better. When you're like, you get a new appliance and you're like, wow, my house is so much cleaner. Why didn't I use this thing before? It's how I felt when I got a Swiffer wet jet. I was like, wow, this is so much easier than mopping, and also smells better, too.
Yeah. I love my steam mop, too.
Yeah.
We have a steam mop, and we have, a wet vacuum. Essentially, all of my appliances are my favorite.
Because they're amazing. And you use them all the time, because
exactly.
Why wouldn't you?
My favorite of the favorite is my Roomba, though. It doesn't replace...
See, I've never had a Roomba, so I wouldn't know how...
It's not like an actual Roomba, just before anybody thinks I'm too bougie, it's like an off-brand.
It's an off-brand Roomba.
Exactly. The only thing about, or rather not the only thing about it, but the thing about it is that it doesn't replace, a real vacuum job, but I've got 5 animals, so it
keeps up when you're not vacuuming.
A ton of fur and dirt that gets brought in from the outside, and honestly, I will never not have my little robot vacuum.
When do you have yours run? Do you do it in the morning when no one's home, or?
I run it, I run it It starts running when we wake up, because then it sucks up all of the dirt that the dogs track inside from their 4 trips out before we leave in the morning.
You know, that old thing.
Well, yeah, because there's like, they go outside first thing, they come in and eat, they go outside again, they come back inside. Freya sees a squirrel, so they go back outside. I leave Freya outside for a little bit until she decides to come back inside, and then she'll see a squirrel again, and she'll walk back outside, and by the time all that's said and done, it's time for me to go to work.
This doesn't happen to me for some reason, though.
What,
Zero
the
does.
dog?
Yeah, the Zero doesn't do that. He's very like, I will go to the bathroom after I've eaten, and he'll just do it all at once. He's very good about it. I don't know why.
Our dogs love to go in and out.
Right now, at least with the cold weather, he likes to sit outside, but for the most part, he's not. He's not really like, coming in and out, in and out, in and out.
Yeah.
Well, you have a yard, like a big, big yard, and Zero's not really a runner, and he has no one else to run with, so I guess.
I want my yard to be bigger, because, I mean, we
Frey's
have like
a big girl.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she is fucking wrecked our backyard.
She decided to trample the entire thing.
Yeah.
You can always put
grass
grass
seed.
seed.
Have grass. Yeah, but then she'll kick it up when she goes outside.
That's true. That's gonna be a whole adventure later when you go to sell your house and you're like, this is the backyard, don't look too hard.
Yeah, really.
Did you want a football field or whatever? Yeah, you can start from 0. Here you go. It's just blank out there. I mean, at least it's fenced in.
Yeah, 3/4 of the way.
3/4 of the way, for the most part.
Yeah.
Most dogs, it's fine. It's good enough, right?
Except for Merlin found the one hole in the fence, and boy, does he fit through it like...
Did you put something there to block it?
No, I haven't yet. I need to.
You should before he goes goodbye and slips right out.
It's been on my list of things to do for like a week.
Oh, that boy is gonna slip out. He's gonna be Buttery boy.
Buttery boy! Oh no! Well then, I hear that you have a really good and long spooky story for me.
I do. It's not spooky per se.
Well, you didn't tell me one way or the
That's
other.
true. I didn't tell you what kind of story it was.
I just kind of assumed it was spooky, but it doesn't have to be spooky.
It's not spooky. It's true crime related, because we haven't done one in a while.
That's true.
What was the last couple we did? It was spooky, right?
Hold on. This is why we have a website. ghoulgaminggals.com, my friends.
When we post things, we don't remember them anymore. Don't worry, guys. We delete them from our brains immediately after.
Essentially. So, I did the Barry Pomeroy Castle. You talked about Ed and Lorraine Warren with Olivia and David.
Yep.
Oh, I talked about the Black Dahlia, but that was at the end of January, since we have gone
so it's been a month.
Bi-weekly. And before that, you did the Dial Top Pass.
So it's essentially been a month since we've recorded anything other than
spook.
That means it's time. It's time. Buckle in,
time.
boys and girls. So I was messing around on true crime websites because I wanted to get some stories that I never hear of, because you always hear like the same like 20 or 30, especially if you're people like us that listen to other people's podcasts and, you know, like watch true crime shows and documentaries and stuff. You always hear about the same ones. Wouldn't you say that's correct?
That is correct.
I always hear the same, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, because obviously some are way more interesting than others. That's why there is a whole subgenre for this kind of thing.
Yeah, that's why they're popular.
It does make it hard for when you're trying to find good stories and you're like, oh, not this one again. Like,
yeah, really.
Or you like go and look and see someone else's, I don't know, it's,
or some podcasts will accidentally post
the story that you were thinking about doing
within a week of each other.
That's literally what just happened to me. Was the story that I wanted to talk about was just posted by a different podcast, and I know it probably wouldn't matter, but I'm like, well, let me at least space it out. Like,
yeah, that's what happened to me with JonBenet Ramsey. I was gonna do JonBenet Ramsey, and that's why we drinked it, and I was like, well.
Yep. Also, a story that's been covered a ton, so.
Also true.
So it's just hard. But, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to tell you about Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb. Have you ever heard of these guys, these buckaroos?
No, I have not. So
okay.
This was gonna be a wild ride for me.
That is gonna be definitely wild.
Oh,
so,
I love the way you said that.
I gotta make it spicy. So, to hop into it, Nathan Leopold, just to give you a backstory on both of these guys, because it is important to the story.
Okay.
Nathan Leopold was born on November 19th, 1904 in Chicago. He is the son of Florence Foreman and Nathan Leopold, which is a wealthy German Jewish immigrant family. He was actually a child prodigy, and He actually knew like 15 different languages. He had completed an undergraduate degree at the University of Chicago and planned to begin studies at Harvard Law after a trip to Europe. So he was a very well-versed person. He was very educated, especially in the early 1900s. That wasn't very common, unless you were wealthy, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
He also loved birds. He was an amateur ornithologist, so he published different papers in different newspapers around the U.S., which is saying something because he was pretty young. He was not very old. Child prodigy, literal child prodigy, which again, probably is because he was rich and could get education at a young age.
Yeah.
The other guy, his name is Richard Loeb, and he was born on June 11th in 1905, so he's not that much younger than Nathan.
Mm.
He was born in Chicago as well to Anna Henrietta and his dad, Albert Loeb. And Albert Loeb was also a wealthy lawyer and retired vice president of Sears, Roebuck and Company. His father was Jewish and his mother was Catholic. And again, just backstory, not really important, right. But he actually had skipped several grades as well, and he was University of Michigan's youngest graduate at age 17. So again, both of these guys, super smart.
Super smart, yeah.
Which is good and bad, I guess. I don't know.
I guess it depends on what you're gonna tell
me.
Me
It really depends on how you see this later. Loeb was kind of more laid back than Leopold. He wasn't really interested in anything but socializing, playing tennis, and reading books. Like, he was a very, like, chill guy, but Leopold was known to be, like, super extroverted and loved to socialize, loved to do, like, crazy teenage stuff. You know, like, the kids that you grew up with who's like, oh, he got caught stealing from this store, or he got caught with drugs or whatever. He was that kind of kid. He was just, like, always getting in trouble.
Okay.
So, Leopold and Loeb had actually met in the summer of 1920. Both boys had grown up in a Jewish neighborhood in Chicago, so they knew each other from a young age. Leopold was enrolled in the University of Chicago at 15, which is good and bad, again, because he was probably too ahead of his time. It tends to be that, like, people that grow up too quickly tend to do some crazy shit. Mm-hmm. A lot of serial killers actually have really high IQs. Or really low IQs. Which is interesting. Have you seen the studies on that? Like, either they have really intensely high IQs or really, really low.
And there's, like, literally almost no in between.
There's almost no in between, you're right.
Yeah.
So, Loeb, being also very, very smart, they had met very early on because they were both at the University of Chicago at such a young age, and because they both were young students, they got along because they knew someone in their age group, which this isn't common at that time. Like, imagine being like 14 or 15, so ahead of the game, and then you meet someone your same age, and you're like, I'm a child prodigy too, high five.
Right, and then you just become instant friends because it's like one thing you can bond over.
So here's what's interesting. They were friends, and then they turned into lovers. Secret lovers, because this was the 1920s. And, you know,
about it.
Yeah, honestly, it was very interesting reading this because everything was like the gay lover true crime duo, and I was like, that existed? That, like, I didn't know that was a thing. Which, I guess, cool. Not the fact that they were a true crime duo, but that they were so openly, like, gay and out in the 1920s.
Yeah, good on them. Ish.
Good on them, ish. Angel's like, maybe I shouldn't say that quite yet.
Yeah, I don't know their story, but I have a slight feeling that it's not gonna end up good for the LGBT representation.
It definitely doesn't, which is also an issue that, like, people are like, well, we don't want representation like that. That's not what we meant.
Yeah, I feel that.
So, the two teenagers, when they returned to Chicago in the fall of 1923, they seemed to really not have a lot in common because they were both very different. One of them was introverted, one of them was extroverted, but they still became intimate friends because so this whole time, they keep saying that they're friends and lovers, so I don't know if they're friends with benefits or actual, like, boyfriends.
It wouldn't surprise me if they were just saying they were friends because of the time period that this takes place in.
Because they were so opposite, they tended to be drawn together, I guess. The more Leopold learned about Loeb, he actually liked him more in the beginning. Loeb was kind of, like I said, destructive. He stole cars, he set fires, he was smashing storefront windows, literally anything he could, because he was just like that. And none of this made his partner not like him. He was like, he's cool.
Yeah, I guess so.
Which, I don't know if I would hang out with somebody that did that, but he did. Loeb loved to raise his stakes. He was like a gambler, essentially. He always wanted to do vandalism, but he wanted to, like, make a way to do it in a fun way. So he wanted to have this escapade with his partner, and he wanted to make money doing it. So he brought up something that neither one of them took seriously at first, and then they went, you know what, no, seriously, we should do this. So Leopold and Loeb talked about kidnapping a child. They spent hours and hours discussing this crime and planning its details, and they decided upon a $10,000 ransom. After a lot of talking about this, they thought this was going to be foolproof. They would direct the victim's father to throw a packet of money from the train that traveled south of Chicago along the elevated tracks of Lake Michigan. They would be waiting below in a car, and as soon as the ransom would hit the ground, they would take it, and then they would just drive away. Foolproof, right?
Sounds like it to me, I guess.
Like, nothing could go wrong.
Everything went wrong.
Honestly. I don't know why they thought this was a great idea. They didn't plan this out as well, because there's a lot of issues with this. Like, someone could see them. Someone could, like, turn this into the police and be like, oh, someone's waiting for me. They were gonna kidnap a child and be like, hey, I have your kid unless you drop this money out of a train, and then I have to catch it. And then, like, what happens to the kid? Do you, like, just drop the kid off? What happens to the kid afterward? Here's the other issue. They needed to find a victim. Not easy to find just a lonesome kid. Where do you find a kid to kidnap all of a sudden? Especially a kid whose parents would be rich enough to give you that much money.
With rich enough parents.
But here's how it happened. On the afternoon of May 21st, 1924, Leopold and Loeb drove their rental car slowly around the streets of the south side of Chicago, looking for any possible victim. And around 5 o'clock...
What, did they rent a car specifically?
They rented a car, yes.
Specifically for this?
Yes, because they didn't want the car to be traceable.
Except for when you rent a car, it still is traceable. Okay.
Not at that time. It was less traceable then.
Okay.
Again, this is the 1920s. There's not as much checking. Now, you have to, like, give in a form of ID and, like, a bunch of stuff. I don't think they had to do all that for this. They just had to have enough money for it, I think.
Sure. Okay. Makes sense.
They're driving around. They were driving for 2 hours, and they were ready to just not do this because they were like, we'll just do it a different day because this is taking too long and I don't want to keep driving around. But as Leopold drove more, he hit Ellis Avenue, and Loeb was sitting in the rear passenger seat when he saw his cousin, Bobby Franks, walking on the opposite side of the road. And Bobby's father, because Loeb knew him because they were family, was a wealthy businessman, and he knew that he'd be able to pay the ransom. So he tapped his partner on the shoulder and pointed at his cousin. So Leopold turned the car around and drove towards Bobby. And he pulled alongside of Bobby, and he was going slow. Loeb shouted from the rear window, "Hi, Bob," and the boy turned and saw his cousin, which... you know, not that weird. Like, oh, it's my cousin. Cool. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
But it was a little weird that he had someone else driving the car, and Bobby had never seen this guy before. He still was like, whatever. The guy in the front that the boy had never seen said, "Hey, I'll give you a ride." And Bobby shook his head and went, "No, I'm good. I can walk." He was literally almost home. He said, "Come on in the car. I want to talk to you about the tennis racket you had yesterday. I want to get one for my brother." I guess they had seen him a different day, like carrying a tennis racket. Probably, again, because it was his cousin, he probably saw him all the time.
Sure.
Bobby moved closer to the car, and he was actually standing by the side of the car, and Loeb looked at him through the window, and all he could think was, I could grab him and pull him inside, but he kept talking to him, hoping that he could convince Bobby to get in the front seat. Bobby stepped onto the running board of the car, which is like that outside step.
Yeah.
Again, this is a 1920s car.
Yeah.
Imagine renting a 1920s car. Jesus. You know how expensive this would be? The passenger door is now open, and Bobby was like sliding himself inside, and he finally sat down in the passenger seat and closed the door. Loeb gestured towards Leopold and said, "Oh, you know Leopold, don't you?" And Bobby looked at him and was like, "Nah, I don't know this guy." Like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. His cousin said, "You don't mind us taking you around the block, do you?" And Bobby said, "No, that's fine. Certainly not." And he turned around in his seat to face his cousin, and he smiled at his cousin, ready to talk about his success in his tennis game from the previous day. And the car slowly kept going down Ellis Avenue, and as it passed 49th Street, Loeb felt around the backseat of the car for his chisel. He had taken a chisel, taped up the blade so that it was blunt on one end, so he could use it as essentially a club, enough to knock somebody out if he wanted to, which was the goal. He wanted to knock him out, not kill him.
Right.
At 50th Street, Leopold turned the car left. As he made the turn, Bobby looked away from his cousin and glanced towards the front of the car. So as he looked forward, Loeb reached over the seat and he grabbed his cousin from behind with his left hand, covering Bobby's mouth to stop him from yelling, and hit the chisel into the back of the boy's head. Once he pounded it into his head with as much force as possible, he thought that Bobby would pass out, but he didn't. So Bobby is now twisted up and in pain and trying to raise his arms to protect himself. And Loeb is confused because he's like, okay, why the hell is he not passing out? I think Bobby at the time was 12.
Oh.
Not like 6. Like he's like an older kid.
Yeah, but still a kid. For some reason I thought that the kid was like the cousin was closer to their age. I didn't realize he was only 12.
He was a kid, for sure.
A tiny human?
A tiny human. He's a tiny human compared to them. Now, Bobby is in pain because he just got hit in the back of the head.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what's going on, so he's just protecting himself. But his cousin keeps smashing this chisel down 2 more times into Bobby's forehead. The last blow, the 4th blow, gashed a hole in Bobby's forehead, and blood from his wound started going everywhere. It went across the seat, it went on to Leopold's trousers, like the guy driving the car. It's on him now.
Oh my god.
It was on the floor. His cousin thought, okay, my cousin must be unconscious now. Surely 4 hits would make him knock out, you would assume.
Surprise, bitch.
He thought, Bobby is still conscious, like surely that would have knocked him out, like 4 blows is enough. Loeb reached down and pulled Bobby upwards over the seat into the back of the car. He jammed a rag down his throat, stuffing it down in his throat as hard as he possibly could.
Oh my god.
Tore off a big piece of tape and taped his cousin's mouth shut.
Oh my god.
All he could think, Loeb himself, was, like, finally he stopped crying. Like, he can't yell anymore, wasn't yelling anymore. Loeb relaxed his grip on his cousin, and Bobby slid off his lap and lay basically lifeless at the bottom of his seat. At this point, he did pass away. So Leopold and Loeb had expected to carry out this perfect crime. They tried to dispose of his body in like a sewage drain.
Right.
In this remote area outside of Chicago. What he didn't expect was that Leopold had glasses in his jacket pocket, and it slipped out while they were disposing of his body.
Oh my god.
They never noticed it. So upon returning to the city, Leopold dropped a ransom letter into a postbox, thinking that it would arrive at Bobby's parents' house at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the next day after they killed Bobby, a random citizen spotted the body and notified the police. The Franks family confirmed the identity of the victim as Bobby. Oh, sorry, he's 14. I lied.
Okay.
But he's still a kid.
I still thought, like, originally that he was, like, in his 20s.
So now they're thinking, we did it. This is the perfect crime. No one's gonna find out it's us. And now it's time to, like, figure out the ransom now that, like, Bobby's been found. What I think wound up happening was they thought that Bobby's body wouldn't be found for a while. So I think that what they were trying to do was get leverage and be like, we have your kid. If you give us the money, we'll give you the kid. But the issue was the kid died. They were just trying to knock him out. So I don't think that they thought that Bobby had been identified yet. I don't think they realized that he had even been found, let alone identified.
Right.
So by the body, they found these glasses, and it wasn't hard to find out that it was Leopold's glasses.
Right.
At this point, Leopold and Loeb were leading suspects because they were always seen together, because they were lovers. Like,
Lovers.
I don't think anyone knew
friends
that
with
they were
benefits.
lovers at the time, but yes, they were always together. 10 days after the murder, on May 31st, both of the boys confessed and demonstrated to the state's attorney how they killed Bobby Franks. The trial of this was crazy. Crow, which was lawyer for the Franks family, had said the most complete case ever presented to a grand or petit jury. Like, they had so much evidence against these guys, and it didn't help that one of them had a history of doing things like vandalizing literally everything. Like, he was definitely smart. He couldn't hold his impulses. He was not good at controlling his impulses. So, the trial, Crow realized, would be a sensation. So, Leopold admitted they had murdered Bobby solely for the thrill of the experience. He was quoted saying, "A thirst for knowledge is highly commendable, no matter what extreme pain or injury it may inflict upon others." And he told a newspaper reporter, "A 6-year-old boy is justified in pulling the wings from a fly, if by so doing he learns that without wings the fly is helpless." So he was smart, just a fucking idiot at the same time.
Yeah.
So the defendants, they collected their wealth, like, they were smart.
Yeah.
The high regard within Chicago for their families and the nature of the homicide, everything combined to make this like one of the most intriguing murders in the history of Cook County at the time. This is not something that happened a lot, let alone in the 1920s, and also so heinously. Like, it was a kid, and they were, I guess, considered still kids, but like old enough to know better.
Right.
They had realized that he would try to, like, Crow would take advantage of the case, and he was 45 years old. He had a huge career as Chief Justice of the Criminal Court, and since 1920 as state's attorney for Cook County. So he was a leading figure in the city, and he knew that he could get Leopold and Loeb to the gallows. Like, he wanted to hang them, which, fair. If you try to murder a kid, I feel like that's not really saying a lot at that point. The public's interest for the trial was definitely fascination, because it was a grisly mess. Like, all of this case was incredibly sensationalized. Like, they posted it everywhere, and they were trying to get attention towards this case to bring justice to Bobby Franks. At the time, this is a heinous murder. They tried to, like, use this to their advantage to, like, get people to be religious and believe in God, and it was a lot.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So at the time, because of the giant change in how the country was changing, in this time people were smoking cigarettes and drinking more, and there was more, like, sexuality was becoming a thing, like an open and free thing. They thought sensationalizing the case would bring more, I don't know what word to use for this, would, like, scare people into living this, like, sinful, what they thought was a sinful lifestyle. Like, in the 10s to 20s, what we do now would be, like, blasphemous.
Yeah, really.
So they were trying to use this against the case to be like, oh, this is what happens when we raise kids in this time period where we're dancing and drinking and smoking. Like, we get murderers, kind of thing. An evangelical preacher, Billy Sunday, was passing through Chicago on his way to Indiana, warning people that the killing could be traced to the moral miasma, which contaminates some of our young intellectuals, and that...
Oh my
yeah.
God.
And that he considered fashionable for higher education to scoff at God. So that's where this time period is, just to give you an idea of what's going on, okay?
Oh my God.
I found this in a Smithsonian clip, and I was like, this is hilarious that this guy is trying... It's not hilarious, but it's interesting to see how times have changed, to an extent.
Yeah.
But also how times haven't changed, because I feel like there's a lot of true crime that happens now that people try to write it off as, like, oh, it's because these kids and their cell phones, like...
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's interesting to see that mindset kind of hasn't changed, even after it's been, like, a fucking 100 years.
I tend to maintain that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, honestly. Like, nothing has... In 100 years, people are still gonna fucking say the same exact thing, so... But, at the, outraged public right now, Crow, he was facing, like, a daunting adversary in the courtroom. He was facing Clarence Darrow, who was a defense attorney. Because they were rich kids, they could hire a really, really great lawyer for them. So this was an issue, because this lawyer, he had actually achieved notoriety within Cook County as an amazing speaker, a great lawyer, a champion of people that were defenseless, and he actually became the most famous lawyer in the country at the time when he successfully defended the socialist labor leader Eugene Debs against conspiracy charges that grew out of a strike against the Pullman Palace Car Company. So, again, not great, because this guy could easily, like, find a way to get these kids out of trouble because he was rich, and because the families were paying him to do this. So this was a whole issue. They were scared that they would get free. So Darrow knew that he might be able to play the trial to his advantage. Darrow was passionately against death penalty and saw it as barbaric and vengeful punishment that served no purpose. So he tried to run a trial to persuade the jury that they didn't need death penalty. So that's a big thing.
Yeah.
At the time, hangings were still very apparent.
Yeah, and they were like kind of commonplace.
They were commonplace. So
yeah,
he was trying to steer that away. He was more trying to get them. He'd rather them be locked up than dead. So that's what he was trying to shoot for at like the very worst. So the lawyer Darrow, he saw confirmation of these views in the field of like psychiatry. He wanted to emphasize that they were probably in need of psychiatric help due to like experiences in their childhood, stuff like that, which I don't know. It's like
yeah, I guess.
And he also tried to like blame it on possible like issues with them growing up, like maybe they had health issues that made them it's weird. Here, I'm going to read this to you, a snippet. I just want to give you so at the time endocrinology was becoming like more used, and that's like the study of your glands. It was an emerging science that seemed to deny the existence of individual responsibility. Several recent scientific studies had demonstrated that an excess of deficiency or certain hormones produced mental and physical alterations in the afflicted person. Mental illness was closely correlated with physical symptoms that were a consequence of the glandular action. Crime, Darrow believed, was a medical problem. The courts, guided by psychiatry, should abandon punishment as futile, and its place should determine the proper course of medical treatment. So he didn't think that they were solely responsible because of the people they were. He thought they grew up deficient, essentially.
Wow.
Which, like, at the time, I guess makes more sense because there wasn't a lot of evidence of, like, what makes people the way they are. Like, now we have research that shows that serial killers are the way they are because of mental illness or because of mental deficiency, not because of, not because they were glandularly wrong. Like, they had some, like, traumatic experience that gave them issues, and, that's what most serial killers have. Like, I would say 75% of serial killers probably have some type of mental illness because of some trauma relating early in life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he was trying to kind of, like, lead it towards that way, trying to be like, hey, they grew up wrong and are deficient, so it's not their fault, essentially. So, could any of this philosophy that he was saying really help him? So, the murder rate in Chicago at the time was higher than ever, and Darrow wanted to not do any death penalty or anything like that, and Crow believed that there would be more cases of murder at the time. Criminals were fully responsible for their actions and should be treated as such, is what he thought. So, this was set for an epic, like, battle, because one of them believed, no, these kids are just, like, terrible kids, and one of them was like, no, but they're sick. Like, so it was interesting. So in this legal strategy, this was really, really difficult. And on July 21st, 1924, the opening day of court, Judge John Caverly indicated that the attorneys for each side could present their motions. Darrow asked the judge to appoint a special commission to determine if the defendants were insane. The results of an insanity hearing might be what they need to get them out of trial, and if the commission decided that Leopold and Loeb were insane, they would just send them to an asylum. It was also possible that the defense would ask the court to try each defendant separately instead of together. And Darrow already had expressed his belief that the killing was a consequence of each defendant influencing each other, so they wanted to try them together. There was no indication that the defense would argue for a severance, though, so they were tried together. It was likely that Darrow would ask the judge to delay the start of the trial beyond August 4th, which was its assigned date. The judge, as Chief Justice of the Criminal Court, would expire at the end of August. He just died.
Oh, I like how they use the term expired.
Like he's baked beans that just like ran out of time.
Yeah, really.
He was like cabbage and he like rotted and they were like, damn it, we were so close.
Now I've got to go get more baked beans and cabbage. I'll be really smelly later, but...
Farting a storm up.
Yeah.
So, oh my god. So Caverly, Caverly's term as Chief Justice of the Criminal Court ended because he died. And then there was two options that could have happened. The defense could request a continuance with the new Chief Justice, and the Chief Justice might assign it a different judge to hear the case, but Caverly was one of the more liberal justices at the time, and he had never voluntarily sentenced a defendant to death. They thought it would be foolish for the defense to request a delay that might remove him from the case. Darrow might also present the motion to remove the case from the Cook County Criminal Court. Almost immediately after the kidnapping, Leopold had driven the rental car across the state line to Indiana, because he's an idiot, and Bobby might have died outside of Illinois in Indiana, and therefore the murder wouldn't fall within the jurisdiction of Cook County.
Oh.
Fucking annoyance, right?
Yeah.
So Darrow had already declared that he didn't want to ask for a change of the venue, and Crow, in any case, he was like, I could still charge Leopold and Loeb for kidnapping as a capital offense in Illinois, because the kidnapping did happen in Chicago. So that's the only thing they were like, okay, we could at least do that. Darrow didn't choose any of those options, and it was a whole issue. So Darrow 9 years earlier, in an otherwise, 9 years earlier, this case wasn't very big, but Darrow had pleaded Russell Pethick guilty of murder of a 27-year-old housewife and her infant son, but he had asked the courts to mitigate the punishment to try and make it about his mental illness, as if he had mental illness, and that's why he did it. So he was trying to do the same strategy in the defense of Leopold and Loeb. His clients were guilty of murdering Bobby Franks, but he wished the judge to consider mitigating their punishment. The major factors in mitigating this punishment was their age, because they were young, that they pleaded guilty.
But they were still adults.
He wanted the judge to consider their age, the fact that they pleaded guilty, and their mental condition. And it was really smart at the time. By them pleading guilty, avoided a trial by jury, which, if they said that they didn't do it, then a jury would have been there. So now Caverly is over the hearing to determine a punishment from anywhere from death penalty to a minimum of 14 years in prison. So there's two very different things that could happen at this point. Darrow wanted to argue his case before any other judge, and he didn't want jurors in the middle of all of this. He tried to flip it to now, saying he doesn't need to, argue insanity to save Leopold and Loeb. He only needed to persuade the judge that they were mentally ill. A medical condition not at all equivalent or comparable to insanity to obtain a reduction in their sentence. He only needed a reduction because really the only other thing that would happen is they would get death by hanging.
Yeah.
During July to August 1924, the psychiatrists presented their evidence to the judge. William Allinson White, the president of the American Psychiatric Association, told the court that Leopold and Loeb had experienced trauma at an early age at the hands of their governesses. Loeb had grown up under very strict household, and he had a lot of punishments. He had no choice but to lie to his governess. That was the only way that he could get out of getting in trouble. And Mr. White's account said that had set him up for a path of being the way he was. he considered himself the master criminal mind of the century, and that's why he did something like this. And White testified, and I quote, "Controlling a large band of criminals whom he directed, even at times he thought of himself as being so sick to be confined to bed, but so brilliant and capable of his mind that the underworld came to him and sought his advice and asked him for his direction." Yeah, that sounds like a fucking ego trip.
Yeah, it does.
Leopold, he said, had also been traumatized, having been sexually intimate with his governess at an early age, is what they claimed.
Yikes.
Other psychiatrists, a couple different ones, William Healy, Bernard Glueck, of both like very big places, confirmed that both boys possessed a very vivid like fantasy life. So they're trying to spin this to say like, oh, they were raised this way because, you know, they grew up with traumatic circumstances, which is what is true. That's how most serial killers wind up being the way they are, some traumatic experience. Yeah. There is no like proof of either of these things. Not saying it didn't happen. We don't know. We'll never know, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Each of the psychiatrists, one for the state and the other for defense, contradicted each other, which made this more difficult. And other observers noticed that each side spoke for a different branch of psychiatry and justified separately like each verdict, which made it difficult for them to pick like what was actually going on. The expert witnesses for the state, all the neurologists, had found no evidence that there was any trauma or anything that had damaged either of their brains or nervous system, so they came to the conclusion that there is no mental disease in either of them. So all of this, psychiatrists like trying to diagnose both of the guys, and they were like, it didn't work. Fuck. Like, I don't know what they thought was gonna happen. They were just assholes. Like, the guys were just assholes. That was it. They might have had some trauma, not enough to do what they did. Especially to someone they knew. It just kept going on. Once they had passed the point of being like, okay, it's not mental illness. The morning of September 10th, 1924, Cavalry prepared to sentence Loeb and Leopold. The final day of the hearing was to be broadcast live over the station WGN. And throughout the city, because this was huge at the time, all of, you know, the people of Chicago were trying to listen in and see what happened. They were all pausing to wait, but the judge's statement was very, very quick. In determining punishment, he gave no weight to the guilty plea at all. Normally, a guilty plea sometimes, like, mitigates punishment and would save them, but it did not in this case, literally at all. The psychiatric evidence also was not considered to be mitigation for anything. The defendants, Cavalry stated, and quoted here, have been shown in essential respects to be abnormal. The careful analysis made of the life history of the defendants and of their present mental, emotional, and ethical condition has been of extreme interest, and yet the court feels strongly that similar analysis made of other persons accused of crime would probably reveal similar or different abnormalities, and for this reason the court is satisfied that his judgment in the present case cannot be affected thereby. At the time, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb were 19 and 18 at the time of the murder, and the youth part of this also didn't help them at all. So Cavalry decided he would hold back from imposing the extreme penalty on account of the age of the defendants. He sentenced each defendant to 99 years.
Wow.
They did not get death penalty. They just got their entire lives in prison.
Their
literal entire lives in prison. The verdict was a victory for everybody, obviously. The guards allowed Leopold and Loeb to shake their lawyer's hand before they took the prisoners back to their cells, and 24 reporters crowded Darrow and the judge and everyone and thought it was a big victory, which it is to an extent. Like, they locked up. I think they were shooting for death penalty though, really.
Oh, okay.
Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, they took very different paths. In 1936, inside Stateville Prison, James Day, a prisoner serving a sentence for grand larceny, stabbed Loeb while he was showering, and they tried to save him. So he only lived in prison for he only lived for 11 years in prison or something like that. Not a long time. Not a long time at all. And Leopold served 33 years in prison until he won parole in 1958. And at the parole hearing, he was asked whether he realized that every media outlet in the country would want to interview with him. And there was already, people trying to get him to interview about what happened and how his time in prison was. And he said, I don't want to be any part of that. He just wanted to be free. He had deemed himself like a humble person. He was quoted saying, all I want, if I'm so lucky to ever see freedom again, is try to become a humble little person.
Okay.
So once he was released, Leopold moved to Puerto Rico, where he lived very, very quietly, and he studied for a degree in social work at the University of Puerto Rico. He started writing a monograph of the birds on the island, and in 1961 he married somebody.
Okay.
Which I don't know if I would want to marry someone that murdered a child, but you know.
Yeah, I would.
Do you think she knew?
Either, I don't think. He moved to a different country, right? I'm not.
He
really
moved to Puerto
sure.
Rico, so.
Yeah, it's possible she didn't even know and he kept it from her.
Maybe. During the 1960s, Leopold was able to actually travel to Chicago quite frequently to see his friends from when he was a teenager, near the university that he attended, and used to go to his mother and father's graves and put flowers on them because his partner had passed away at the time. He was the only surviving person, but unfortunately, Nathan Leopold, at the age of 66, died in Puerto Rico of a heart attack on August 29th, 1971. That's the end. That's the story.
Oh, wow.
Of Nathan.
What a wild ride.
Leopold and Richard Loeb, the lovers that never got to love. I don't know. I don't know. Never got to love each other.
Well, that was wild ride indeed.
It is a wild ride.
Okay, so we're going to start with Stadia. That is because, as you may very well know, and it's been a couple weeks since the last time we did news, so I know some of this might be old news, but whatever. Stadia, as we know, shut down per Google's command, I guess, if that's how
Google's command. Google will command.
Google said, shut it down, and then they did. It was mostly because Stadia it didn't go well. Like, it was received fine, I guess, but it wasn't super popular. Most people weren't using it. According to this article here on The Verge, I'll read you a little quote. When Stadia first launched, Sean Hollister said it was, quote, just a beta, right in the headline. And apparently Stadia developers agreed. Quote, Stadia employees shared the concern that the technology felt like a beta at launch, according to Wired. Although Stadia worked in that it could stream games from the cloud to a PC or phone, it was still missing many features that were shown off in its pre-launch marketing. Essentially, even though Stadia launched as a, quote, completed product, it still felt like a beta.
And not an actual fully developed thing.
Yes. Google attempted to attract users to Stadia by making deals with publishers for ports of big games. Like, the big one that comes to mind is Red Dead Redemption 2.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, per port of a game, Google would spend millions of dollars.
That's
Absolutely
a lot.
Outrageous. Yeah.
Why did they think that would be okay?
I don't know, because they weren't making money back into it for the thing, and like Red Dead Redemption is a really popular game, but obviously most people were playing it on PC or PS4, not on Stadia, so why you would spend millions of dollars to port a single game to Stadia is
be a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm. In a blog post about the studio's closures, Google has said that it has, quote, increased focus on using our technology platform for industry partners, which could suggest that Google is going to offer Stadia as a white label cloud gaming service to other companies instead of being their own cloud streaming service. But yeah, so that is essentially what happened, is that Google was putting way too much money into Stadia and not receiving nearly the amount back from subscriptions from the streaming.
Jeez.
Now we're going to talk about Pokemon, because Kay is very excited about Pokemon.
I think a lot of us are excited about Pokemon.
So the first thing I want to talk about, obviously, is that Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were announced in the most recent Nintendo Direct, coming late 2021 to the Nintendo Switch. I'll read to you straight from the website because it is a good little blurb. It says, quote, experience the nostalgic story from Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, games in an adventure reborn to the Nintendo Switch system. Adventures in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl games will take place in the Sinnoh region. Rich in nature, with Mount Coronet towering at its heart, Sinnoh is a land of many myths passed down through the ages. You'll visit many different locations in the Sinnoh region while striving to become the champion of the Pokemon League.
Okay.
So that's exciting.
That is exciting.
This is obviously like, you know, it's in a new engine, and you still have your, you know, Turtwig, Chimchar, and Piplup as your starters. Kind of looks like, almost like they did it in the same engine as the remaster for Link's Awakening. And it just looks really good, and I think that it's a good little remake. Then, along with that announcement of the Diamond and Pearl remakes, we have Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think is how it's pronounced, which will be available in early 2022. And this is essentially the Sinnoh region, but like in ancient times, in a feudal era looking time when Pokeballs are made out of wood. I'll read to you this little thing.
Okay.
It's like a little RPG, and it says Pokemon Legends Arceus game honors past Pokemon games' core gameplay while infusing new action and RPG elements. You'll need to catch, survey, and research wild Pokemon in a long-gone era of Sinnoh region to create and complete the region's first Pokedex. And so the first three, or rather your starters for this game, are starters from different regions, which a Pokemon professor who encountered them on research excursions brought them to Sinnoh. So starters are Rowlet, Cyndaquil, and Oshawott. So that's going to be a pretty interesting game. I'm kind of excited about that one. It's not going to be out until 2022, but I don't know if you saw the meme about it. I think we talked about it. Maybe Kay sent it to the Snapchat, but it was like, there was a meme where it showed screenshots from Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and then also from Arceus, next to screenshots from the remaster of Link's Awakening and Breath of the Wild. And it was like, are you excited for the Pokemon game that looks like Zelda, or the Pokemon game that looks like Zelda?
I watched either.
Yeah, I'm excited for both. So, I just thought that meme was very funny. The next thing, which I am not surprised by, but it's still a little bit sad, is that Anthem Next, colloquially referred to as 2.0, has been officially scrapped by BioWare.
Oh, shocker.
And nobody was surprised. In the announcement from the executive producer, Christian Daly, says, in the spirit of transparency and closure, we wanted to share that we've made the difficult decision to stop our new development work on Anthem, aka Anthem Next. We will, however, continue to keep Anthem live services running as it exists today. No new DLC, no new story missions coming for Anthem. And honestly, I'm not even really surprised by this.
I would say I don't think anyone is, except the people that are like diehard.
Yeah. This kind of, like I mentioned, nobody is surprised by this. However, it is said that other big name projects at the BioWare studio are still on course, which obviously that means that Mass Effect Legendary Edition obviously is coming out soon. They teased another new Mass Effect game coming out that I'm sure they're developing. Everybody is kind of sitting on pins and needles waiting for Dragon Age 4. And so even though Anthem Next is scrapped, game development on these other big name projects is still going strong. Along that same vein, EA Arts published a blog post that essentially said Dragon Age 4 is not going to have a live service element to it, and the whole Dragon Age fandom rejoices. So this seems to come from, obviously, the essential failure of Anthem with its live service, as well as how well BioWare's Star Wars games played, because Disney was like, no live service, no microtransactions, there's going to be none of that. After Anthem flopped, after Mass Effect Andromeda flopped, and after how well Star Wars did for not having live service, EA essentially was like, okay, we get it. You're not a games as a service kind of company. Yeah, you don't need to do any live service for this next game. That is actually some very good news. I'm very excited about it, because I did not want there to be like live service. I enjoy Dragon Age games, and I enjoy playing online. Like, obviously, you and I play Overwatch together all the time with Kay. I don't mind playing online, but Dragon Age feels like such a personal experience with the way that the decision-making is
like,
made.
I don't need it to be online.
Yeah, I never, like, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, like, any RPG like that, even, like, I don't know, Legend of Zelda, I just don't feel like I want to play with other people. Those are not games that I feel like I want to share my experience with, because they're not intended to have, like, a group experience. Like, Destiny, Overwatch, Halo, those games are intended to have,
those are
like,
games that
group
make sense to have that.
When I'm having my RPG, I don't want to have to sit and wait for three other randos to show up to do this one story mission.
Yeah, you're like, can I please not have to play with strangers to complete this? Can I just fucking do what I need to do?
And I like to take my time. Dragon Age 4 was kind of a long game, but I definitely 100%ed it in one of my playthroughs, and it took way longer to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you enjoyed.
I should say, I'm very glad that EA has pulled the plug on the live service for Dragon Age 4. And that's something that BioWare has historically been very good at, as not being a live service game. So the last thing I have is from my favorite Witcher, Henry Cavill. And he posted...
My favorite Witcher, as opposed to the other ones, you know?
He had posted a picture on Instagram a little while ago. So the picture itself looks like he's getting into hair and makeup as Geralt. And in the foreground, in the blurry foreground, looks like a stack of papers with some words on it. And the caption of his picture says, quote, "Secret project, or just a handful of paper with random words on it, ... Guess you'll have to wait and see. Happy hump day, all."
Oh my god.
So, Game Pressure actually enhanced the photo. You can actually see a side-by-side of it, where the one side, they sharpened the picture up.
Ooh.
You know, almost to a point where you can't really read it again, but if you look at it closely, you can actually read it.
You can read it.
The words that you can make out, Cerberus, Reaper, Geth, Talizora, those are all Mass Effect words.
That's amazing that someone was like, no, I'm gonna fucking figure this out. Yeah. To the point where they literally sharpened the photo enough.
That's really exciting, and it could be... Now, we don't know, like, what exactly that means. Does it mean that he is going to be connected to the next game in the Mass Effect series? Is he working on, like,
That'd
a
be interesting.
Mass Effect TV series the way he's working on a Witcher TV series? Is he doing something with the remake? Who knows? Who knows?
That'd be interesting.
The actual text from that thing, I know it's a little bit hard to read in the link, so somebody actually
like transcribed it.
Read it to you. It says, following the events on Tachanka and a failed coup by Cerberus to take over the Citadel, the Quarians offer support to the Alliance if Shepard helps them reclaim their homeworld, Rannoch, from the Geth. Assisted by a Quarian, either Talizora or Admiral Derozen, Shepard boards the Geth dreadnought and rescues a captive Geth unit, either Legion or a fax occupied by Geth virtual intelligence, and then disables the Reaper to control the signal over the Geth. That kind of gives you the storyline of one of the missions in Mass Effect 1 or 3. I played all of those games back to back, so
I would say,
all kind of run
also,
together.
that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I haven't played Mass Effect in a very, very fucking long time. That's awesome that someone was able to actually transcribe it. And also even, like, who had the thought process to be like, I know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. That is what I have in gaming news. Probably my favorite bit is that last bit about Henry Cavill.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the most exciting part.
I don't necessarily think that Henry Cavill is my hall pass. However, I think that he's a very attractive gentleman.
I've heard a lot of people say that they're like Henry Cavill is the person that people are like, oh, he's so hot. And apparently I'm broken because like people say the same thing about Jason Momoa, and I also am like, what? No, I just don't care. Like,
oh, fair enough.
I feel like he's too buff. Like, I don't...
No. I don't think he's buff in real life, though. I think he kind of is,
No, he is.
Is he?
No, he is. Yes.
Oh.
He's fucking massive, dude. Like, that man is huge. But that's the thing is, like, people that are, like, Jason Momoa, too, like, people that are so buff that it's, like, borderline unrealistic, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't make
here's the thing,
my gears turn.
This is probably too much information for the podcast, but oh well. I secretly love to be dominated. So people who are bigger than me or who can
Okay, that makes
dominate
sense
me,
though.
That shit.
If you
turns me
like
on.
that, then it makes sense that you're going for someone that's like, I need a big dude, because that makes sense.
Did I ever tell you how I realized that was my thing?
No.
This is my parents listen to this podcast.
I would say let's not say that.
No, I'm going to. It's fine. This is where my parents need to stop listening to the podcast. Love you guys. Please don't. Anyway, what I was saying is that I realized this because I was playing Final Fantasy 15 and something about Gladiolus fucking did it for me. And
Jesus
that was when I realized that I wanted to be dominated. So
that was it for you?
That was it for me. That was it.
That doesn't surprise me. Like, at all.
Gladio is bae.
But that's the thing is, like, if you like that, then okay, I understand why you would like someone like Henry Cavill or Jason Momoa, because they're big ass dudes.
So Henry Cavill I find attractive, Jason Momoa too, I guess. But my hall pass, so to speak, is absolutely not like that because it's Jackson Rathbone.
Oh, you did show me this.
Love him.
Mine's Jake Gyllenhaal. I will say most of mine is women. So
Billie Piper is my.
Why?
Because I fucking love her. She's so hot. Haven't you looked at her recently?
No, I'm gonna have to look her up because I don't remember what she looks like. Billie. Oh, you mean the girl from Doctor Who?
Mm-hmm.
She's pretty cute, but
she was like a pop artist
the biggest thing about Billie Piper that always bothered me, she has a big ass mouth, dude. She got a mouth that can eat your soul. She's got a mouth that can eat your whole soul in like one breath. But
that's okay.
She is beautiful.
Do you want to know who Kay's hall pass is? Keira Knightley.
Out of all of the women in the world.
Don't say that. Kay loves her.
She is cute. Like I just apparently have different tastes than you guys.
Here's the thing though. While I don't necessarily consider Keira Knightley like a celebrity crush or anything, I'm pretty sure she was my lesbian half sexual awakening. Because
you were like, oh my god.
I was like, oh.
She's pretty cute. Like she's not bad looking, and I love all the TikToks that I've been seeing of her, of people pretending to do her accent and also her mouth posture. Amazing. If I find one, I'm gonna send it to you guys,
yes,
and Kay will be like, what the fuck? But someone imitates her mouth posture so perfectly, and it's really funny. But anyways, thanks for listening to us ramble, guys. I'm
Stay
sure that's what you wanted to hear today.
Stay all the way to the end of the episode to hear too much information about Angel.
There you go. But yeah, go look at our website at ghoulgaminggals.com. If you search us on basically any social media, you can find us. Instagram, maybe Facebook. And also I've been streaming a lot more lately, so check out our Twitches. Mine's twitch.tv/JanelleNelly. And Angel's is Aria Makila, and I'm sure you've heard us spell it enough, so I'm not going to do it this time.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Join us in the next one, and hopefully you enjoyed all of the gaming news and the lovers and not so lovers of Leopold and Loeb.
Every time I wanted to talk about Leopold, I'm just not going to say their names.
No, don't. It's confusing, but that's also part of it, is like their names are so similar-ish that it becomes... Yeah. It was like a thing. Leopold and Loeb. Leopold and Loeb. Anyways, thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.